Ladies and gentlemen, we're officially 21 days after harvest and we're just about to do the final jarring. So I figured there's no better time than now to do a full breakdown on drying and curing from step 1 to the end and show you how I preserve the aromatics in my flower, make sure that it's super tasty by the end of the process, and the best part about it, you don't really need any fancy gadgets or anything expensive, just common household stuff that you usually would keep around. So if you're dealing with hay terps, ammonia, you might be jarring too early, perhaps you're even running into mildew or mold, definitely stick around, this video is for you. Stay tuned. And I just want to put a little disclaimer out there as well. Some of the methods that I'm using in this process are definitely a little bit unorthodox. You will definitely recognize some of the process from other dry and cure tutorials, but there's certain things that I like to do that just really help me preserve my flower and make sure that it's in a state where I really like it to be in. So if you like your flowers to be sticky, pungent, aromatic, tastes really good, mold free, definitely just hear me out. I've been using this method for about 2 years now and comparing it to everything from grove bags, burping jars, all sorts of things that I've tried under the sun. I feel like this method really locks in how I want my flower to be and how it's sticky, aromatic, and just everything that I want in good flower that's fresh. So all I ask is keep an open mind, stay till the end, and just hear me out. Try this method yourself if you're dealing with any of those hay terps or anything of that nature. Drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this process. Yo, welcome to Nana's Flowers, where we talk everything from germination, cultivation, post-harvest, and more. And today, we're going to be doing a full breakdown on drying and curing from step 1 to the very end and showing you how we can preserve your flowers to be aromatic, tasty, holding that moisture, making sure it's fresh and sticky throughout the process. Now, mind you, I've been growing for a little bit over 6 years now, and I've tried a lot of methods under the sun. I've tried grove bags, I've tried burping jars, I've tried turkey bags, I've tried all sorts of things. And really what I found was, in one way or another, I just wasn't able to get the results that I was looking for in terms of my cure. Sometimes the moisture would be off, sometimes the smell would be off, sometimes both would be off, and I would just be left confused because you see so much information online that's contradictory from one another. And so I really wanted to put it to the test and hear out some of the people that I trust in terms of the information that they provide. So 2 folks that I'm going to be crediting today are going to be Urban Ramo and Build a Soil. And I found that the combination of the 2 methods really work together. Man, and I've been bummed out before, dude. There's been times where I've grown a plant for 4 months, then I harvest it, think I'm drying and curing the perfect way, and then you open that jar and you're like, oh my gosh, and you just don't know what to do because you're stuck with a bunch of stuff that you're not really happy with. And mind you, I've had family and friends tell me all the time, no, you don't know what you're talking about, this stuff's great and whatever. Perhaps I'm a little bit hard on myself as well, but when I grow, I really want to make sure that the stuff I grow is top tier, top notch stuff that you just can't find anywhere else. I find that that's really rewarding, especially after taking so long growing a plant. Mind you, there's going to be phenotypes here and there that just don't produce a lot of smells, so you could totally lock in the dry and cure process perfectly. But if you have a plant that just doesn't smell that much or at all, you're not going to get those dank tones that you want from that plant. So keep that in mind. Genetics are a big thing, but let's get into it. So first and foremost, let's go over the harvesting process. So what you want to do when you're harvesting your plant is make sure that your trichomes are fully mature and ready for that chop. To do this, you can use a magnifying glass, you can use your phone with a macro lens, and you can even use a lot of those digital microscopes that a lot of people have. So what you want to do essentially is make sure that your trichomes are mostly milky, and that's going to be like the cusp of the beginning of the harvest stage. When most of your trichomes are milky, you know that you're just about ready to chop. Normally what I like to do is make sure that my trichomes are just a touch of amber with mostly milky trichomes. This tells me that we're just about ready to get into that stage where the THC starts degrading, and that's exactly where I want it to be. There's definitely people out there who like to have 30%, 40% amber, and to each their own. I just don't have any sleeping issues anymore like I used to when I was younger. And so once I start to see a little bit of amber pop up in the trichomes and they're mostly milky, I know that it's ready to go, and that's exactly where I like it. To each their own, but that's basically the harvest window that you're looking at, is right when the plant is showing mostly milky trichomes to the point where, 30 to 40% amber. I really wouldn't go past that. I mean, again, it's personal preference, but by the time you're done drying and you're done curing, you're going to see a little bit more degradation in those trichomes. Not that they're maturing more, but they're degrading quicker. And you're going to see that your flowers are just golden for the most part, and you're not really going to get the kind of effect that you might be looking for. It might be great sleep medication, but unless you're looking for that specifically, you probably don't want to harvest at that point. You might want to harvest a little bit earlier. And there are certain cultivars too where if you harvest it too late, a lot of those terps end up dying off, and you get kind of like a bland plant. That can also happen if you harvest too early and there's a lot of clear trichomes in your plant. So it depends on what you like, but that's definitely going to be the optimal harvest window. So moving on from there, we know that your plant is ready for harvest, and you're going to want to chop your whole plant if you're growing indoors especially. If you're growing outdoors and you have a monstrous plant where like each branch is its own plant, definitely harvest branch to branch. I understand why you would want to do this. Or let's say you even have a plant that's indoors and it just has a funky way of growing and there's just like a lot of flowers touching each other and it's just not super optimal for a drying space. I would definitely cut branch to branch in that scenario and make sure that there's like an even amount of space between all your flowers. But for the most part, when you grow indoors, you should be able to hang the whole plant. Now, where you hang your plant is super important. You want to make sure that the parameters are set up properly so that your dry space is optimal for that plant, just so you can get a low and slow dry and make sure that everything is perfect. So the parameters you're going to want for your dry space are going to be between 60 and 70 degrees on the Fahrenheit or 16 to 19 Celsius. And then we're looking at 58 to 60% on the RH. And the main reason we do this is because terpenes are volatile. And under those conditions, we're not losing as much smell as we are under the conditions where it might be a little bit hotter and a little bit drier. So those are the parameters that I find work best for hanging my plants in. I usually like to dry between 10 to 14 days specifically for that drying phase. And I'm checking every now and then after the 10th day to see how the stems are. And to be sure that they're ready and completely done drying, you want to make sure that the stem has sort of like a little crack to it. We don't want to have wet stems that are completely bendy and you can just feel that moisture in them. It's going to be too early for trimming and it's just not optimal for the plant to be able to break down everything altogether. So basically what you want to do is make sure that your stems aren't bending like a wet bend and if there's too much moisture, you want to make sure that there's like a little bit of a crack when you put some pressure under it, right? It shouldn't completely break apart or fall apart because then you might be at a point where it's too dry. But if you are under those conditions of 58 to 60 on the RH, you shouldn't really get to a point where your plants are too dry. Think of a jar. If your flowers are in there and the constant humidity is between 58 to 60% on the RH, there shouldn't really be any point where your flowers completely dry out because it's not getting to a point where it's lower on the RH than it could be in the flower. And so theoretically, your plant shouldn't ever dry out if it's hanging in a space between 58 and 60 on the RH because there's no space for your flower to dry out like that if it's under those conditions. And another thing you want to make sure of as well is that you have a little bit of airflow going on in your dry space. And what I mean by a little bit is perhaps taking one of your oscillating fans that you use during the grow period, putting it on the floor of your dry space and just aiming it to the corner of the wall on like a 1 or 2 setting where you're just a little bit of gentle air blowing and circulating the humidity around the space. Another fantastic tool to use if you don't have it already is a humidifier. If your space isn't between 58 and 60 degrees, it's very, very easy, especially if it's kind of like a small space or a grow tent. It's really easy to make sure that your space is between those parameters. And a lot of humidifiers nowadays have a built-in humid-stat with the internal settings where you can basically input it so that it is between 58 to 60% on the RH constantly. And so you don't have to worry too much. As long as you have some airflow on the bottom, not directly hitting any of the flower, but it's circulating that humidity around, you're good to go and your flowers will get a nice even dry. Now, once you get to that point where your stems are cracking just under a little bit of pressure, not fully breaking off, but just cracking, you're at that point where you're ready for trimming. Now, how a lot of homegrown is trimmed is basically by taking off a lot of those fan leaves or those even sugar leaves that don't have too much sugar on them, and you're basically keeping everything else on. Most of the sugar leaves do stay intact, but the sugar leaves actually do a great job in preserving the trichomes and making sure that the quality of your flower is still there. At the end of the day, you could always take some flower out, pluck some of those leaves off, pack a bowl, but you can't add preservation to the trichomes if the integrity is already lost. And so essentially what you're doing is you're trimming around the flower, you're taking off any of the leaves that don't really have anything beneficial on it, and you'll find a lot of success doing it that way. So now that we're done trimming, we're gonna get to the interesting part. Now, before I do that final jar, I do what's called a sweating process. And the sweating process happens by taking those trimmed flowers and you're gonna be throwing it into a bag like this. Now, I really like to use this particular brand. It's called Zigzag. This brand is fantastic because there's no really like extra odors coming from the material of the bag, which I find a lot of like plastic bags especially have like an odor that comes off the plastic and can kind of come onto your flower. But there's no odor that comes off of this one, and it's smell proof and it really works well with curing. Believe it or not, I know you're looking at this and you're like, oh man, plastic, like what are we talking about? At the end of the day, these are reusable, so you can toss this into the dishwasher. I've reused these many times, and I just find that they're fantastic for curing. I'm not sponsored by them or anything of that nature. I just really like their products, and so if we're gonna be using any product for this process, I would definitely go with the zip-zag bags here. They have like a double layer seal on the sides as well, and so these bags are really good at preserving the quality of your flour. Now, mind you, this is a Canadian company, so this might not be available everywhere that you're at. If you can find any bags like this that are more heavy duty, and making sure that it's a quality grade plastic as opposed to something that could leach onto your flour, or you can even use turkey bags. I just find that turkey bags can be a little bit not as great at holding the moisture as one of these could be, for sure, but use what you have in your arsenal and you can definitely make the best out of it, for sure. So what I like to do is I like to toss all of the flour into here, and I like to fill it up as much as I can, really, but I do like to leave a little bit of space because at the end of the day we are curing. So I will fill these bags up, and then the interesting thing that I like to do is I like to crack the corner of the bag open, and it's just the corner, so the rest of the bag, like from here to here, is going to be sealed, but it's just like a 1/4 inch kind of like crack on that side there. And so in that same drying environment where we have the parameters between 58 and 60% on the humidity, we're going to keep these bags that are full with the trim flour, and we're going to keep that in there, and we're going to keep that seal cracked open about a 1/4 inch just to let any last minute off gassing happen, and so that it's ready for that final jar. Now, once 24 hours have passed where the flours have been sitting in here with that 1/4 inch cracked open, I like to fully close the seal of the bag and then leave it for 24 hours. So this gives the flour a true sweating process where it's in an airtight environment, and it can really bring that moisture out from its internal to the external and make sure that that drying is completely even. And so for that next 24 hours, you're gonna keep it completely sealed, and you're gonna wait for the next day. Once that next day hits, you're gonna crack open the seal again, 1/4 inch, have the rest of the bag closed, and then you're going to repeat the process. Every day for about a week, you want to go back and forth between having it sealed and not. And then for the last 2 days of that week, so you're going 5 days, and then 2 days, the last 2 days, we're going to be completely sealing the bag for 48 hours. So for those last 2 days, the bags are completely sealed. That last sweat happens, and you'll notice after that 48 hours and the bags have been completely sealed, crack that bag open, you're going to be like, whoo! It just smells gonna be crazy, man. I've been curing like this for about 2 years now, and I haven't dealt with mold, I haven't dealt with ammonia, I haven't dealt with any weird smells or anything like that. Every time I open a bag, and I have all sorts of different cultivars, they all have their unique smells, flavors. Everyone loves them that I showed the flour to, and I couldn't be happier with the results. So that's why I want to share them with you and see if I can help those who can find optimal results with their curing and not have to spend like $4,000 on a curing machine, if you know what I mean. Now that we're done the sweating process, it's time to jar for long-term storage. And now when we're jarring our flours at this point, and because we don't really need any more air exchange because we already did that throughout the sweating process, we're gonna be filling our flours to the top of the jar. I know, for the curing stage, we need some air, a little bit of air at the top of the jar, right? But because we're done that sweating process and the final off-gassing and everything has already happened, we're totally fine for that final long-term storage, and we're gonna be throwing the flours in and filling them right to the top. You don't want them filled to the top and like squeezing them down or anything like that, but gently filling the jar up and then shaking it and making sure that there's no air spaces between flour. If there is a little bit, that's totally fine. You'd rather that than to have the flour mushed together, but minimal airspace, and making sure that it's filled like to the top where you can comfortably close your lid, but it's still like filled right up to there, you know? And so we're doing that to make sure that there's minimal oxidation happening. Oxidation is ultimately what leads to your flour not being as sticky. There's a lot of degradation that can happen if your flours are filled up like, let's say, halfway to the jar, or even like 3/4, and you're just like leaving it like that, because that air that's at the top, it's gonna oxidize your flour, and over time it'll become old, it'll become musty, and you just don't really want that. So because we're done the curing process and we're just filling up the jars for long-term storage, it's totally fine if you fill them to the top. Now, mind you, I'm not trying to say that the curing process is completely done. The longer that the flour stays in these jars, the longer it's going to actually become better, especially if the jars are held in a space where it's the same parameters between 60 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. You're going to see very minimal degradation. You also want to make sure that your jars are in a space where there's no light. Light can definitely degrade your product, so I definitely suggest keeping your jars in a space where it's cool and there's no light. Once again, I really want to give credit to Urban Ramo as well as Build-A-Soil. I've basically taken both the methods, combined a little bit of each part. It's aromatic, It's tasty. I've had some people telling me that it's the best that they've ever tried in their life. And honestly, I'm humbled by that because it took me a while to be able to get to this point. And so I want to save you guys the headache of going through each and every type of process and different methods and drying and curing and then being like, man, why can't I get my flower to smell any good, right? So I really encourage you guys to try this method out. Keep an open mind and just try it out before you say anything negative about it. I'd love to hear your opinions on how everything worked for you. If you are dealing with any of those issues where you aren't getting those aromatics or tastes from your flower, I'm really hoping this video can be helpful to you. If you enjoy gardening, growing tips, reviews, things of that nature, definitely hit that like button and subscribe button. I specifically like to get into genetics that were really popular in the early 2000s, the 90s, and even the 80s to go back to a time where I felt that cannabis really had its best representation. Really hope you guys have a good one. And as always, thank you for watching. Have a good one. Peace.